Welcome to the Biblical Wisdom Channel. Imagine this. The atmosphere is charged with tension, hope, and immense anticipation. The year? More than 2 millennia ago. We are plunged into an era when biblical scriptures were coming to life amidst people facing monumental challenges. In the midst of wars, famine, and an unrelenting search for spiritual answers, emerges a sacred book filled with mysteries, astonishing stories, and enigmatic figures that defy human logic. This sacred book of mysteries is the Bible. Within its pages, we find beings so mysterious that they astonish even the most learned scholars. These beings are described in such unique ways that you can't help but wonder, what really happened back then? And this is where your journey begins. Together, we will delve into the 13 most mysterious beings of the Scriptures. Beings like the 24 elders surrounding God's throne, celestial creatures like the Cherubim and Seraphim, and even figures like the Nephilim, those fiery wheels mentioned by Ezekiel. And it doesn't stop there. Terrestrial and sea creatures like Behemoth and Leviathan also make this list. But the most fascinating part is that the Bible never mentions these beings without attributing profound significance to them. Each of these beings serves a clear purpose, revealing something powerful about God, the universe, and most importantly, what He wants to teach you. Some of these beings have descriptions so awe-inspiring that they will leave you marveling at the spiritual realm. Are you ready to open your eyes and mind to the unknown? Let's begin. The 24 elders. Have you ever imagined a scene so magnificent it seems to come straight from heaven? The 24 elders are exactly that, a celestial vision filled with symbolism, mystery, and a profound message about victory and redemption. They appear in the book of Revelation, described as glorious figures surrounding God's throne. John the Apostle had the privilege of witnessing this spectacle and recorded what he saw, leaving us with a scene rich in meaning. When John looked toward heaven and saw God's throne, he noticed something extraordinary. 24 thrones encircling the central throne, occupied by elders dressed in white, with gold crowns on their heads. The first thing that stands out is this image of purity and authority. The white robes symbolize holiness and redemption, while the crowns represent victory, a reward given after enduring in faith. These elders are not there by chance. They serve as a reminder that God is faithful and rewards those who remain faithful to Him. But who are these elders? Some interpretations suggest that they represent God's redeemed throughout history. Some scholars believe the 24 elders are symbolic, representing the 12 patriarchs of Israel and the 12 apostles of Jesus, uniting the Old and New Testaments. Others see them as a symbol of the fullness of the church, composed of all the saints redeemed by divine grace. Regardless of the interpretation, they show us that heaven is inhabited by those who have received God's righteousness. What's remarkable is that they are not merely seated there as spectators. These elders play an active role in praise and worship. In Revelation chapter 5, we see the 24 elders bowing before the Lamb, holding golden bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of the saints. This means that your prayers, no matter how simple, have an impact in heaven. This act emphasizes the connection between what happens on earth and in the kingdom of God. Now let's talk about the crowns these elders wear. They are not just decorative. In a gesture of humility and acknowledgement, the elders remove their crowns and cast them before God's throne. It's as if they are saying, "Lord, everything we have, everything we are, belongs to you." This attitude teaches us that all glory should be returned to the Creator. The 24 elders remind us that God is at the center of everything. Every detail, the robes, the crowns, and the thrones, reveals God's greatness and the importance of living a life that glorifies Him. Now, how about diving even deeper into the celestial mystery? Nephilim, the wheels of fire. Now, imagine a vision so awe-inspiring that words seem insufficient to describe it. That's exactly what happened to the prophet Ezekiel. He saw something that transcends earthly understanding, the Ophanim, also known as the wheels of fire. His description, recorded in the book of Ezekiel, is one of the Bible's most enigmatic and fascinating passages. Shall we unravel this mystery together? The scene unfolds by the river Chebar, where Ezekiel has a vision of God's throne. Surrounding it, he sees angelic beings known as cherubim, but what catches his attention is what's beside them. Massive, radiant wheels filled with eyes, moving in all directions without ever veering off course. These wheels are no ordinary objects, nor simple mechanical structures. They are alive, intelligent, and brimming with spiritual significance. First, let's talk about the eyes on the wheels. What do they represent? The eyes symbolize God's omniscience. They signify that God sees everything, everywhere, all at once. Isn't that both comforting and challenging? Knowing He is aware of every detail in your life can bring peace, but also serves as a reminder to live righteously before Him. And what about the movement of the wheels? The wheels moved in every direction without ever deviating. This is a clear representation of God's omnipresence and absolute control. No matter where you are or what's happening, God is in charge, guiding everything with precision. Have you ever thought about that? Even in the most chaotic moments of your life, God has a purpose and a direction. Another intriguing aspect is that these wheels are connected to the cherubim, who in turn are directly linked to God's throne. Whenever the cherubim move, the wheels follow, as if they are an extension of divine glory. This connection shows that the Ophanim are not just a detail in the vision. They play an active role in the heavenly plan. They seem to act as a vehicle carrying God's presence, demonstrating that He is always on the move, working within creation and human history. But what does this vision mean for your daily life? It serves as a reminder that God is sovereign and ever-present, even when you can't make sense of what's happening. Just as the wheels follow a perfect, though incomprehensible, pattern, your life is also under divine control. Even when it feels like everything is spinning aimlessly, God is at the center, guiding every step. Now let me ask you, have you noticed how God is present in every detail of your life, even in moments of sadness, loneliness, and danger? Just as the eyes on the wheels see everything, God perceives far beyond what you can see or understand. If you found the Ophanim fascinating, wait until you learn about the next mystery. Behemoth, a powerful creature mentioned in the book of Job. Behemoth, the masterpiece. In the book of Job, amidst the pain and suffering of a righteous man, God speaks to reveal His greatness and absolute control over creation. Among the many things He describes to demonstrate His power is Behemoth, a creature so immense and powerful that it defies human understanding. What or who is this creature? And what does it teach us about God's sovereignty? God introduces Behemoth as a masterpiece of His creation. It is described as an enormous, strong, and imposing being that eats grass like an ox, but whose body structure reveals something far beyond simplicity. Its tail is likened to the trunk of a cedar tree, and its bones are compared to iron bars. Every detail conveys a clear message. Behemoth exemplifies the creative power of God. Many scholars believe that Behemoth might refer to a hippopotamus or perhaps an elephant, creatures known for their strength and commanding presence. However, the description of its tail, large and powerful like a cedar, has led others to speculate that it could be an extinct species, or even a mythical animal symbolizing the brute strength of creation. What matters, however, is not its physical identity, but what it represents: God's sovereign order over the world. Picture the scene. Job is in the middle of an existential crisis, questioning why he is enduring so much suffering. Then God points to Behemoth, as if to say, "Look at this. I created something so magnificent and care for every detail. Do you think I'm not in control of your life as well?" This response prompts us to reflect on our own relationship with God. Often, we seek immediate answers, but forget that the Creator, who governs even the most powerful creatures, also holds dominion over our destinies. Another interesting point is that Behemoth is described as a peaceful creature, living in rivers and grazing in meadows, yet no one can dominate it. It is a clear example of how there are elements in creation that surpass human strength. Still, to God, it is merely another part of his masterpiece. This reminds us that, no matter how small we may feel in the face of life's challenges, God is above all, controlling even the most overwhelming and grand details. Have you ever felt crushed by something that seemed bigger than you could bear? Behemoth is a perfect metaphor for those moments. It reminds us that, no matter how strong the giants in our lives may be, they are under God's command. Knowing this truth can bring you relief and assurance in times of pain and struggle. Leviathan, the monster of the depths. In the book of Job, after describing the strength and majesty of Behemoth, God takes the conversation to another level and introduces Leviathan, a sea creature so terrifying that even the bravest warriors wouldn't dare face it. Unlike Behemoth, which symbolizes the serene strength of the earth, Leviathan rises from the depths as a symbol of chaos, uncontrollable power, and divine supremacy. The description of Leviathan is breathtaking. It is portrayed as a colossal monster with scales so impenetrable that no spear, sword, or javelin can harm it. Its eyes shine like the dawn, its mouth spews fire and smoke, and even just looking at it makes the bravest heart falter. Through every detail, God emphasizes the grandeur of this creature, an untouchable being that reigns supreme in the waters. But what truly stands out is what Leviathan represents. It is not merely a physical creature. In biblical literature, Leviathan often symbolizes chaos, the untamed forces of nature, and even spiritual adversaries. It's as if God is saying, even the most destructive chaos is under my control. Nothing, not even what seems invincible, is beyond my reach. Think about this. In many ancient cultures, sea monsters were associated with evil forces and the unknown. For the Hebrews, Leviathan might have symbolized the destructive power that threatened the world created by God. However, in Job 41, God makes it clear that not only did he create Leviathan, but he also keeps it under his absolute dominion. This teaches us that even in the most chaotic moments of our lives, God remains sovereign. And there's more. Leviathan doesn't appear only in Job. In Psalm 74 verse 14, it is mentioned as being defeated by God, demonstrating that the Creator has authority over everything, including forces that attempt to defy his order. In Isaiah 27 verse 1, it is described as the twisting serpent that will be destroyed at the end of times, a clear reference to God's ultimate victory over evil. Now, think about your life. How often do you face situations that seem as uncontrollable as Leviathan? Problems that emerge from the depths and threaten to overwhelm you? This passage reminds us that God has the power to tame even the untamable. He is greater than any storm you may face. And here's what's incredible. Even as a feared creature, Leviathan is not presented as something outside God's plan. On the contrary, it is proof of the Lord's creative and sovereign power. This gives us a clear lesson. God not only created the universe, but also governs every aspect of it with wisdom and authority. Now follow along because we are just beginning to unravel the celestial mysteries. The next topic takes us back to the heavens to meet the cherubim. Cherubim, the guardians. Among the most fascinating and mysterious beings in the Bible, cherubim hold a prominent place. From the Garden of Eden to the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle and temple, these angelic beings appear as guardians of God's holiness and messengers of his glory. Unlike popular depictions that portray them as delicate angels or childlike figures, biblical cherubim are described as majestic and imposing, carrying profound spiritual significance. The first mention of cherubim is in the book of Genesis, immediately after the fall of Adam and Eve. God places them to guard the way to the tree of life, armed with a flaming sword that moves in all directions. This act is not just one of protection, but also a demonstration of God's zeal for His holiness. Eden, once a place of perfect communion with God, now needed to be shielded from the corruption of sin. In the books of Exodus and Leviticus, cherubim reappear as part of the design of the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant. God commands that figures of cherubim be crafted from gold and placed atop the mercy seat of the Arkansas. The wings of the cherubim stretch out to cover the mercy seat, symbolizing God's presence. It was here, between the cherubim, that the Lord spoke to Moses, reinforcing the idea that they were guardians of the divine manifestation. Ezekiel also provides a striking vision of the cherubim, describing them as beings with 4 faces, those of a man, a lion, an ox, and an eagle, and 4 wings covered with eyes. They are portrayed as living creatures that bear God's mobile throne. This description highlights God's omnipresence and omniscience, with each face representing an aspect of His character. The intelligence of a man, the majesty of a lion, the strength of an ox, and the sharp vision of an eagle. What does this mean for us? Cherubim are more than awe-inspiring figures. They remind us that God is holy and that His presence is to be revered. The fact that cherubim guard the entrance to Eden and the Holy of Holies illustrates that approaching God requires purity and obedience. They are a reminder that our relationship with God is not something to take lightly. And there is a deeper layer. Cherubim also point to the redemptive work of Christ. On the mercy seat, between the wings of the cherubim, the high priest would sprinkle the blood of the sacrifice, symbolizing the atonement of sins. This foreshadowed the sacrifice of Jesus, which grants us direct access to God's throne, something that the cherubim once guarded. Now take a moment to reflect. Do you treat God's presence with the reverence it deserves? The cherubim challenge us to take our faith seriously, recognizing the holiness and majesty of the Creator. If this vision fills you with awe, wait until we explore the seraphim, the fiery angels who encircle God's throne. Seraphim, the angels of worship. Now we come to one of the most fascinating groups in the celestial realm, the seraphim, the fiery angels who encircle God's throne. These beings appear only once in the Bible, but their description is so striking that it leaves a lasting impression of the heavenly vision. They are mentioned in the book of Isaiah, in the famous chapter 6, when the prophet has an extraordinary vision of the Almighty's throne. Isaiah describes the seraphim as having 6 wings. With 2, they cover their faces in reverence to God's holiness. With another 2, they cover their feet, representing humility. And with the last 2, they fly in constant movement of worship and service. This posture conveys something essential. Before God, even the most exalted celestial beings recognize their smallness and surrender completely to His glory. But there's something even more remarkable. As they fly around the throne, the seraphim cry out incessantly, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of His glory." The repetition of holy emphasizes the absolute perfection of God. In Hebrew, repeating something 3 times elevates the idea to its highest degree. Here, the seraphim are not merely declaring that God is holy. They are affirming that He is the very source of all holiness. Another extraordinary aspect of the seraphim is that they not only worship, but also serve as agents of purification. In Isaiah's vision, one of the seraphim takes a live coal from the altar and touches the prophet's lips, saying, "Your iniquity is taken away, and your sin is forgiven." This act symbolizes the purifying power of God, which removes sin and transforms lives. And here is the practical lesson. God calls us not only to worship, but also to purification, so that we may stand before Him in holiness. The seraphim also teach us something valuable about our role in God's presence. They do not hesitate to surrender themselves fully to Him, acknowledging His supreme authority. In contrast, we often resist or hesitate to offer our full worship, distracted by life's concerns. But looking at the seraphim, we are challenged to worship God wholeheartedly with reverence and enthusiasm. Have you ever stopped to reflect on the level of passion and intensity in your worship? The seraphim show us that God deserves more than empty words or automatic gestures. He deserves fervent devotion, recognizing His majesty and holiness. Now let's delve into one of the most enigmatic roles in the celestial kingdom, the angel of death, the executor. When we hear about the angel of death, we are immediately transported to one of the most impactful and terrifying moments in biblical history, the 10th plague in Egypt. This event, recorded in the book of Exodus, marked the liberation of the Israelites from slavery, but also revealed a side of God's power that many prefer not to contemplate: His authority over life and death. On that fateful night, God instructed Moses to warn the Hebrew people to mark their doorframes with the blood of a lamb. This act of obedience and faith was the only protection against the angel who would bring the final plague, the death of Egypt's firstborns. When midnight arrived, the angel of death swept through the land, and cries of anguish echoed across the country, from Pharaoh's palace to the humblest homes. Only the households marked with blood were spared, symbolizing the redemption that would come through Christ's sacrifice. But who exactly was this angel? The Bible does not provide a name or detailed description, adding to the mystery. Some scholars believe it was a direct manifestation of God's power, while others suggest it was one of His angels sent to carry out His divine command. Either way, the mission was clear: execute God's judgment on the Egyptians and deliver the Israelites. The angel of death is not just a symbol of destruction. It also teaches profound lessons about justice, obedience, and redemption. First, it shows that God is sovereign over all things, including life and death. This sovereignty is not a reason for fear for those who walk in obedience, but a source of security, as it demonstrates that God is in control of everything. Moreover, the role of the blood in the story of the angel of death serves as a powerful reminder of Jesus' sacrifice. Just as the lamb's blood protected the Hebrews from death that night, Christ's blood protects us from eternal condemnation. What happened in Egypt was a foreshadowing of what God intended to accomplish on a global scale through His Son. Have you ever considered how this story connects to your life? It calls us to reflect on the importance of obedience to God and trust in His plan, even when we don't fully understand it. It also challenges us to value the sacrifice of Jesus, which offers us a new chance at life. Now follow along, because the next being is perhaps the most intriguing of all. We will discuss Lucifer, the angel who fell from heaven due to pride and became the adversary of God and humanity. Lucifer, the proud angel. Among all the beings mentioned in the Bible, perhaps none is as controversial and enigmatic as Lucifer, the angel who fell from heaven and became Satan, the adversary of God and humanity. His story is shrouded in mystery and symbolism, but the details revealed in Scripture offer a fascinating glimpse of what truly happened. Before his fall, Lucifer was one of the highest-ranking angels in heaven. He is described in passages such as Ezekiel 28 verses 12 to 17 and Isaiah 14 verses 12 to 15, where his beauty, wisdom, and prominent position are extolled. Ezekiel refers to him as the anointed cherub who covers, and perfect in your ways from the day you were created. Lucifer wasn't just another angel. He held a unique position of closeness to God, adorned with precious stones and radiating light, reflecting the meaning of his name, bearer of light. But what happened? How did such an exalted being become God's greatest opponent? The answer lies in Lucifer's own heart. He was consumed by pride. Isaiah 14 describes his thoughts. I will ascend to the heavens. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High. This desire to be equal to or greater than God was his downfall. He wasn't content to reflect God's glory. He wanted to steal it for himself. The consequence was immediate and irrevocable. In an act of justice, God expelled Lucifer from heaven along with the angels who followed him in his rebellion. Jesus refers to this event in Luke 10 verse 18. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. This marked the beginning of a spiritual war that continues to this day, with Lucifer now acting as Satan, the accuser and deceiver of humanity. What can we learn from this story? First, it warns us against pride. Lucifer had it all: beauty, wisdom, and a privileged position before God. But his selfish ambition led to his destruction. It reminds us that true greatness lies in recognizing that everything we have and are comes from God. Additionally, Lucifer's fall reveals the unchanging character of God. He is just and holy, unable to tolerate sin, even in the highest of his created beings. This should lead us to a posture of humility and reverence before him. But Lucifer's story is not just a cautionary tale. It is also a reminder of God's ultimate victory. Despite his rebellion, Satan is a defeated enemy. In Revelation 20 verse 10, we see his final destiny. He will be cast into the lake of fire, where he will be tormented forever. This gives us confidence that, in the end, God's justice will prevail. Now let me ask you, how are you dealing with pride in your life? This story challenges you to reflect on the areas where you need to surrender more to God, recognizing him as the source of all you have. Demons at war. Demons are among the darkest aspects of the spiritual world. They are frequently mentioned in the Bible as evil spirits operating under Satan's command, waging war against God's purposes and attempting to lead humanity away from the truth. But who are they? Where did they come from? And more importantly, what is their impact on our lives and the world? The Bible gives us clues about the origin of demons. Many scholars believe they are the angels who rebelled with Lucifer and were cast out of heaven with him. This fall transformed them into corrupted beings, separated from divine glory, who now dedicate themselves to spreading deception, destruction, and chaos. Their primary goal is to undermine God's plan by attacking those he loves, humanity. During Jesus' ministry, demons often appear, particularly in the gospel accounts. They are described as beings that can possess people, causing physical illnesses, mental torment, and even self-destructive behavior. A classic example is found in Mark 5 verses 1 to 20, where Jesus encounters a man possessed by a legion of demons. Their presence is so overwhelming that the man lives among tombs, unable to be restrained even with chains. Yet when confronted by Jesus, the demons have no choice but to submit to his power. This passage reminds us that, no matter how powerful they may seem, demons are subject to Christ's authority. What about their strategies? Demons are masters of deception. They infiltrate people's lives through temptations, lies, and manipulation. The Bible warns about their activity in Ephesians 6 verse 12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. This spiritual warfare is real, and every one of us is involved in it, whether we want to be or not. But here's what you need to know. Demons can be defeated. The blood of Jesus and the power of the Holy Spirit give us authority to resist them. James 4 verse 7 encourages us, therefore submit to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. This means that when we stand firm in faith and seek God's presence, demons have no power over us. Now think about your own life. Are there areas where you feel oppressed or deceived? This spiritual battle is real, but you are not alone. God has given you the tools to prevail: prayer, his word, and communion with him. Use them confidently. If the world of demons already feels intense, wait until we dive into the next topic: Melchizedek, the priest king who blessed Abraham. Melchizedek, the enigmatic. Among the most mysterious figures in the Bible, Melchizedek holds a unique place. He appears suddenly in Genesis 14 verses 18 to 20, with no introduction or detailed explanation, and then vanishes just as quickly. Yet his brief mention raises questions that resonate to this day. Who was Melchizedek? A mere man? An angel? A prefiguration of Christ? Melchizedek is introduced as the king of Salem and priest of the Most High God. He enters the story after Abraham's victorious return from battle against enemy kings. Melchizedek blesses Abraham and offers bread and wine, a scene later imbued with Christian symbolism. In response, Abraham gives him a tithe of everything he owns, a gesture of acknowledgement and reverence for his spiritual authority. The origins of Melchizedek are one of the Bible's greatest mysteries. Unlike other biblical figures, he appears with no genealogy, no mention of father or mother, and no line of succession. In the Old Testament, this is highly unusual, as lineages are often detailed to establish credibility and purpose. This absence is highlighted in Hebrews 7 verse 3, which states that Melchizedek was without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life. This has led many to believe he was a divine figure or a pre-incarnate manifestation of Christ. The New Testament deepens the mystery by directly linking Melchizedek to Jesus. The author of Hebrews describes Christ as a priest according to the order of Melchizedek. This order is distinct from the Levitical priesthood, as Melchizedek was not a descendant of Levi. He represents an eternal priesthood, based not on heredity, but on a direct relationship with God. This parallel strengthens the idea that Melchizedek was more than just a human king or priest. He pointed to the Messiah. What can we learn from Melchizedek? First, he reminds us that God can operate in unexpected ways. He appears outside traditional structures, as a priest before the Mosaic Law or the tabernacle even existed. This teaches us that God transcends human limitations and can work through anyone he chooses. Additionally, Melchizedek challenges us to reflect on our relationship with Christ. Just as Abraham recognized his authority and honored him with a tithe, we are called to recognize Jesus as our high priest, who continually intercedes for us before the Father. Let me ask you, have you acknowledged Christ's authority in your life? Have you dedicated your best to the Lord, as Abraham did? Melchizedek's example invites us to deeper worship and total surrender. If Melchizedek has already intrigued you, the next topic will transport you to an even more ancient and mysterious time. We'll talk about the Nephilim, the giants mentioned in Genesis 6, one of the most debated and fascinating stories in the Bible. Nephilim, giants on our planet. Few biblical passages spark as much curiosity and controversy as the mention of the Nephilim in Genesis 6 verses 1 to 4. These mysterious giants are described as mighty men of renown, but their origin and purpose remain an enigma. Who were they? Descendants of fallen angels? Or merely extraordinary humans who left their mark on history? The text in Genesis 6 provides some clues. It recounts that before the flood, the sons of God came to the daughters of men and had children, who became the Nephilim. But who were these sons of God? There are several interpretations. The most traditional suggests they were fallen angels, spiritual beings who rebelled against God and crossed the boundaries established for them. Another view is that the sons of God were descendants of Seth's godly lineage, while the daughters of men belonged to Cain's corrupt line. Both theories carry profound implications. If the Nephilim were indeed the result of a union between angels and humans, it could explain why they are described as giants, both in stature and influence. This interpretation is supported by the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal work that, while not part of the biblical canon, sheds light on ancient traditions. Enoch details how fallen angels, known as Watchers, taught forbidden knowledge to humanity and took human women as wives, producing a powerful and corrupt hybrid race. Regardless of their origin, the Nephilim represented the corruption of God's creation. They were among the reasons God decided to send the flood, as their presence symbolized the extent of sin and disorder in the world. In Genesis 6 verse 5, God laments humanity's wickedness and chooses to cleanse the earth, saving only Noah and his family. But the mystery of the Nephilim doesn't end with the flood. In Numbers 13:33, when the spies sent by Moses explore the land of Canaan, they report seeing the descendants of Anak, who were descendants of the Nephilim. This raises further questions. Did the Nephilim somehow survive the flood? Or did the term become a reference to any group of giants or formidable warriors? What can we learn from this story? First, it reminds us of how seriously God regards sin and disorder. The presence of the Nephilim was a sign that humanity had crossed dangerous boundaries, seeking power and glory at the expense of their relationship with God. This challenges us to reflect on areas in our own lives where we may be ignoring His boundaries. Furthermore, the Nephilim teach us that, even amid chaos, God always preserves a faithful remnant. Noah exemplifies this. In a corrupted world, he remained faithful, and God used him to bring renewal and hope to creation. The story of the Nephilim challenges us to live lives of integrity, trusting that God always has a plan, even in times of confusion and uncertainty. Rephaim, the giants of ancient battles. The Rephaim are mentioned in several Old Testament passages as a race of giants who inhabited the earth both before and after the flood. These imposing beings appear in stories of epic battles and conquests, often representing opposition to God's people. But who were they, and why do they feature so prominently in biblical narratives? The first mention of the Rephaim is in Genesis 14 verse 5, where they are defeated by Chedorlaomer and his allies. They lived in a region called Ashtaroth-Karnaim, located east of the Jordan River, indicating their connection to strategically significant territories. Later, in Deuteronomy 2 verses 10 to 11, they are described as a people who were great, numerous, and tall, comparable to the Anakim, another group of giants. The Moabites called them Emim, showing that even among different nations, their reputation as giants was widely recognized. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Rephaim is their connection to the battles faced by Israel. When God commanded the Israelites to take possession of the Promised Land, they encountered peoples descended from these giants. Joshua 12 verse 4 mentions Og, king of Bashan, as the last remnant of the Rephaim. In Deuteronomy 3 verse 11 it states, Og, king of Bashan, was the last of the Rephaim. His bed was made of iron and was more than 13 feet long and 6 feet wide. It is still in Rabbah of the Ammonites. This reveals their immense size and strength. The presence of the Rephaim in the lands Israel was to conquer carries a clear message. Even the most frightening and seemingly invincible challenges can be overcome when God is in control. The Israelites often faced fear when confronting these giants, but were repeatedly reminded that victory did not depend on their strength, but on God's power. Additionally, the Rephaim are mentioned from both historical and spiritual perspectives. They were seen as a symbol of human resistance to God's plan. Their defeat, therefore, was not merely a military triumph, but also a testimony to God's sovereignty over all nations and powers. Even giants, with all their might and dominance, could not thwart God's purposes. Now think about this. What are the giants you face in your life? Perhaps they are fears, doubts, or challenges that seem insurmountable. The story of the Rephaim reminds us that with God, even the greatest adversities can be overcome. He is the one who empowers you to fight and grants you victory, even when everything seems to be against you. The rider on the white horse. Among the most intriguing figures in the book of Revelation, the rider on the white horse sparks some of the greatest debate and interpretations. He appears in Revelation 6 verse 2, when the first seal is opened. Mounted on a white horse, holding a bow, and wearing a crown, he goes out conquering and to conquer. But who is he? A symbol of Christ, a messenger of God, or something entirely different? The color white is often associated with purity, victory, and justice in the Bible. For this reason, many believe the rider represents Jesus Christ himself, bringing a message of redemption and triumph over evil. This interpretation is supported by another passage in Revelation, where Jesus is described as riding a white horse with the name Faithful and True. However, some interpret the rider in chapter 6 differently. seeing him as a precursor to judgment, introducing the catastrophic events brought by the other three riders. An alternative interpretation is that the rider symbolizes the spread of the gospel throughout the world. The bow in his hand could represent the word of God, piercing the hearts of people, and the crown, a sign of his divine authority. In this context, he would be a figure of hope, representing the advance of the message of salvation before the difficult times described in Revelation unfold. Others, however, see the rider as a symbol of earthly conquest and military power, more aligned with the events of war, famine, and death introduced by the subsequent riders. This view suggests that the rider represents human leaders or systems seeking to dominate the world through force, but who will ultimately be overcome by divine judgment. Regardless of the interpretation, the rider on the white horse carries profound significance. He reminds us that the story of humanity is in God's hands and that nothing happens without his permission. Whether as a symbol of Christ or an agent of transformation and judgment, his figure challenges us to consider God's greater purpose amidst events that often seem chaotic or meaningless. Now apply this to your own life. Have you ever asked yourself who or what governs your decisions? The rider challenges us to reflect on where we place our trust. Are we allowing Christ to guide our lives with his justice and victory? Or are we relying on human forces that are bound to fail? God is present in the most enigmatic details of creation, and he desires to be present in every detail of your life too. Share in the comments which of these beings impressed you the most. Let's deepen this understanding together and discover even more about God's Word. May your spiritual journey be strengthened and blessed. See you in the next video.